And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. It's time for Opinion Court. Please do get in touch with us, 22422. That's our SMS line. You could TV Kenya or at Citizen TV News. Please use the hashtag Opinion Court. That's on Facebook and Twitter, allowing us to track your conversation. I'll reintroduce my panel to you. Beginning on my immediate right, Martin Andati. He is a political analyst.
Thank you.
Welcome to the program. In the middle is Edward Kisiagani. He's our resident political analyst. And next to him is an ex-classmate, Professor Peter Kagwanja. What years were those that you were in? Was it uni together?
Yeah, actually we went to university together, and we used to call him Ojwang.
Is there a reason for that?
He looked like a universal Kenyan who could mix with everybody, so we said he can't continue with the Kikuyu name, so we called him Ojwang.
All right.
The other Ojwang was also Kikuyu.
So that's actually right, yes, the actor. Right,
when you are universal,
yes,
people tend to deny you your real identity.
Yeah.
I was very unhappy with them.
Were you?
Very.
Well, let's hope there's no grudge match.
They would buy me lunch.
They'd buy you lunch
from time to time.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, we're discussing the biggest political stories of the week, and we want to kick it off with tomorrow's expected determination by the Judicial Service Commission on the Justice Tunui corruption allegations. I'll start with you, Prof. Kagwanja. What do you think? Paint for us the likely scenarios and their political implications.
It's difficult to paint those scenarios without at the same time feeling pain about what is happening, because we thought we had come a long way into rehabilitating our judiciary. We all embraced the language of reform, that we had really moved from a situation that would get us to what we had in 2007. And the events of 2013 election and what happened thereafter confirmed our optimism that all was well. Now, whatever the outcomes of the JSC investigation on the justice, the reality is that it has really dented our judiciary in a serious way. Dented it not because it has not been dented in the past. You do know about the political purge. They were calling
radical surgery.
The radical surgery that, you know, it was not really reform. I mean, 82 judges, I mean magistrates, you know, 23 judges, 50% of the judiciary.
Fair enough, but right now aren't you talking about quote unquote one man on the dock?
You're talking about one man on the dock, but at the highest level. If you look at Chief Justice Mutunga, after that is the deputy. The next person you are likely to most senior would be that. And that coming after the deputy Chief Justice had been removed under similar circumstances, a lot of corruption, but of those other excesses that were mentioned, abuse of office that were mentioned. So in a word, I would say that we really need to work hard in the remaining time to ensure that this issue does not do a damage to us. I said and argued on Sunday that this is a great indictment for my mentor, and I meant it.
Who's your mentor?
William Mutunga mentored me.
Okay.
And I say this is a real threat to his legacy.
Is it still a threat to his legacy? If JSC tomorrow says that, look, this should proceed to a tribunal, all of this has been somewhat done in full view of the public, though one may question, you know, these allegations, I believe, came about, was it in November, I believe, and now it's only now in January that we're acting on it. But should there be this seeming view of transparency, is it really an indictment on him?
Well, I'm not talking about him as a person, but the ideal he represents. He was our best hope for the reform. After him, I don't see anybody who would be seen across the aisle, both in the opposition and the government, as that magisterial actor who has the capacity, the sinew, and the moral high ground to shake it up. And I think there's still time before he leaves.
Martin, what do you think?
You know, when Mutunga was appointed Chief Justice, the expectations were very high. But he's tried to reform the judiciary. But the performance has been below. You know, people who come from academia and from civil society, they tend to be too idealistic. And the two professors here maybe will confirm that. Because people had expected Mutunga to come and radically change the judiciary. But you know, when you get in, you realize that there are a lot of factors which are, some of them beyond your control. So he has come in, he has found a structure which is existing. And it's not very easy. You know, even if you arrive here one day and expect that you will change your royal media, there are those people who have been here and they establish cartels, and it's not very easy. So those challenges are posing a challenge to Mutunga. But when you look at the Tunoi case, it's very interesting because these issues came up in November. Mutunga has been quiet. Then he claims that he had sent them to CID and the ethics and corruption, but he never went public. Although there are claims from one side of the divide that he was trying to use an internal mechanism. But you know, the Supreme Court is dented. Whether they advise the president to form a tribunal or not, because the perception is that the judges are corrupt. And you know, when you look at some of the judgments which have come out of the courts, some of them are very contradictory. You get a case, the facts are the same, but you find the way one judge rules is totally different from the way the other one rules. Yet the facts are similar, you know. So starting all the way from the High Court to the Court of Appeal, and then now to the Supreme Court. So we have issues with the courts. If Tunoi is sent to the tribunal, that will cause a crisis, because you know, there have been allegations that the money was shared, because in the Supreme Court you sit at least 5 judges to form a quorum, and you've seen on social media there have been claims that 2 ladies were compromised. There are only 2 ladies in that Supreme Court. But those are
allegations.
Yeah, they are allegations.
But I think your point is that you need a majority.
Yeah, you need a majority. So there is no way, if Tunoi was collecting money, if it's true that he collected, then he must have collected for the others. So the mere suspicion that money that judges of the Court of Appeal of the Supreme Court could have been compromised, it creates a crisis of confidence. And if the Supreme Court goes down, we will have a crisis, because in 2017 it is the Supreme Court which is supposed to arbitrate on the petition, if there will be a presidential petition.
Right.
So the moment we lose confidence in that, then and you know, already court has said that they will not go to court. So we are going to have a crisis of confidence in that institution, and that is a very critical institution in this country.
You're saying if it goes to a tribunal?
Yeah.
So should it not go to a tribunal then?
No, you know, we are waiting for the verdict. They might decide that it goes to a tribunal if there is enough evidence, or they might decide that it should not go to a tribunal.
Prof, and yet one would think that even for argument's sake, because the formation of a tribunal is still not an indictment on Justice Tunoi. It is just the formation of a tribunal to probe, and it may come up with its own conclusions. But one would imagine that steps like those may be seen as some form of transparency, or, you know, basically say that, look, we are willing to deal with the highest level of, you know, even the seeming impropriety, you know, at the top level of the Supreme Court. But now both sides, 2 guests have said that they believe that this is a proper indictment on the entire bench. Are we jumping the gun here? Is this going to, are we destroying the legacy of an entire institution just because of one man's credibility is being questioned?
You know, Anne, it's not true that because Justice Tunoi has been, you know, mentioned adversely in this matter, that is when we realize that the judicial system in this country is in bad shape. I think the truth is that most of us, even those of us who have spoken on this show, we have questioned the commitment of our judiciary to provide justice for all in this country. Right from the magistrates court since 2013, we have seen a series of rulings that have not gone very well. So I think Tonui's case just epitomizes a process which has been running for a very long time, and our desperation to have a good judiciary can never be worse than it is now. But what I thought that we can add here is what is happening tomorrow. I think for me, the bigger question I pick from Justice Mutunga is not the fact that he has already identified a process to find justice with regard to the Tonui matter. My case is about the people he chose to find justice for Tonui. Yes, this committee is a government committee. Some of them know a lot of things. I think they needed the independent citizens, first of all, to take that case. I don't expect the Public Service Commission person, the Attorney General, they do not have the confidence of the public to carry out this kind of investigation. So whatever they come out with, there will be protest about it, and even if they say tomorrow...
Why would you say the head of the public service would not have the confidence of the public?
They are serving government. And
just because they're government?
No, let me ask you something, Anne. Recently, I think last year, the president declared that, in fact, corruption is in his own office. The people who work in the president's office are public servants, looked after by Professor Margaret Kopia. What have they done to sort out this mess the president has talked about? Now, there have been cases where even the Attorney General, we can go on and even analyze individual by individual, but the point is this: there were more competent private citizens to examine this case. Unfortunately, some of these people, I don't think that they will have to take political decisions in some cases. So if you hear tomorrow that probably because there are two rulings that will come, possible rulings. One, they might say that Justice Tonui has no case to answer, and when he has no case to answer, the case collapses. But when you hear that announced, you know very well that there is a proper fear, probably. There is probably no evidence, or there is a fear that if we do go the whole hog, we might punish, once Tonui goes, Kidero goes. There's a series of people who will also go. And so the government might, the people who are involved might decide, do we want to go all this and cause this turbulence and earthquake to make sure we end up...
It's going to be a domino effect.
Yes, so they might fear that. But if there is evidence, you also hope that probably they pronounce that he needs to answer some questions, he has a case to answer, and there are people who have already lost confidence in the Judicial Service Commission. They are not likely to accept that. So whichever way the decisions take...
Or it may just be that there wasn't sufficient evidence.
Yes, but whichever way it takes on, it will just worsen the bad situation that the judiciary is in. There is nothing that will even acquit the judiciary.
Let me, with this next question, then bring us into our next conversation, which is about the debate around the election and the election date. There is one theory that is out there that if the domino effect is in fact true, then the point is to remove the entire Supreme Court for the purpose of reconstituting it, for a political purpose. That there are people who are interested in what that court would look like come 2017. Is that something that you think is of, genuine concern, or are we just shooting in the air?
We are assuming that we'll go for the Supreme Court to arbitrate in an election situation. I don't think so. If President Uhuru Kenyatta goes on with his strategy and manages to get 70% of the vote, why do we need the Supreme Court anyway? If he gets 65, 70%, we don't need the Supreme Court. We have another 5 years to sort our mess in the Supreme Court. Two, I don't think that it is that bad, so to say that it cannot arbitrate. I mean, does it mean that we now go to the rule of the jungle? It's not true. The situation is...
reservations.
This is true, but let's
about the possibility of President Kenyatta winning 65.
Not even about the 65, about the president interfering with the constitution of the Supreme Court. You have seen attempts by the executive trying to change the way the Chief Justice is appointed. You know, that is one. Two, they are also trying to manipulate. You saw the people they have brought in the JSC. Those are activists, you know, whose political leaning is obvious. And, you know, it is the JSC members who determine who sits in the Supreme Court.
But Martin, let me ask you a question. Is this Supreme Court, what remains to be manipulated about it now? That, you know,
they would want the credibility of the entire bench has been compromised.
The same people who are now defending the Supreme Court, and they don't want that, and you can see Martin is one of them. And they come from the CORD coalition, those who thought that they lost elections because the Supreme Court was compromised. Now some of them have jumped to the defense of Justice Tonui. They say, if you remove Tonui, you are manipulating the Supreme Court. At what point did they think that this Supreme Court has not been manipulated? So now, now the government is going to manipulate it. Because
you know, he asked me a question. I don't come from the CORD formation. I was in CORD, but I left. But, you know, I have... if Tonui has received money and there is evidence, you know, it will be very easy. If you go to Safaricom, it's very easy for you to know whether he communicated with Kiplagat, you know. It will come out. There is a CCTV cameras in the places where they were, like the Lavington petrol station, the Kengeles. So all that evidence will come out. And if Tonui has been compromised, then he'll have to go. But you know, like the issue
because I wanted to move to the election question. So in respect of changing the entire...
No, I don't think every time there is an issue in an institution, you disband it. You know, if you have one camera malfunctioning in this studio, do you disband we shut the studio, send Akinaan and everybody else home?
No,
that is what
you
get that out and sort out that issue. And that has been our argument. You cannot disband a whole institution because there is one problem here with one person here. So let us address the issues. There are fears in terms of the election of Kidero, you know. And the judges, you know, like now, the law says within 6 months, the Supreme Court should have, the court should have actually finalized all the election petitions. But as we are talking now, there is still the Kakamega issue. Mebo Mruli versus Oparanya. It's still pending in the Supreme Court. And nobody has given an explanation why it's still pending there. So there are still issues in the Supreme Court. But I don't think disbanding the entire court and sending away all the judges will be the remedy. Because even if you send the fellas away, bring in others, you might even bring in worse ones than the ones who have been there. Justice Mutunga is retiring in June, so he still has 3-4 months to go. Kaplana Rawal, I don't even know why she's still hanging on there, because she is claiming that she should retire.
Well, her matter is in court, and the court has allowed her to stay on.
Her position was brought in, that position was created by the new constitution. There was no deputy chief justice.
Fair enough, but I don't want us to debate what is before the courts. The courts have said that she can stay on until that case is heard and determined. But I want to now move to the election date proper, and the question is, you know, there's a lot of concern around if you like, well, not the disbandment, but basically the closure of Parliament early next year, whether they'll be able to pass a budget. IEBC is saying that, you know, they need the billions which have not been passed. What are your thoughts in terms of preparations going into 2017? Are we on track, or is there a problem? I'll start with you, Prof.
You see that there have been the issues. For example, we had a discussion here with the chief executive of IEBC, and he said he had his organization had asked for about 2 billion shillings for voter registration, for example, and he was only given 500 million, which I said, you know, you are being set up for failure. But now, Parliament has a duty to allocate resources for elections. It is not a favor they are doing anybody. So the idea of using, you know, Parliament's inability to legislate and do the correct thing in order to extend the election doesn't arise. And the people don't even understand that the election date, which comes to the second Tuesday of August of the 5th year, if we change it, it has implication on the term of office of the president. If you read that Constitution 255, many articles including DE, one of them says this, that if we want to change it, to amend the constitution, we have specific things that we do. One of the matters that will cause us go to a popular referendum, that means everybody votes on it, is the term of office of the president. So that is one thing. So if we say now we are moving the election to December, and Parliament decides that it has moved that date, we shall ask them now, who will be the president? The president will be acting illegally. So we have extended the term of the president illegally. Now we shall go for referendum. So we shall be asking for more money, even for referendum, before we go for elections, than if it is easier for Parliament to sit down right now and sort out that mess. That mess, in fact, Anne, we should tell Parliament to stop making noise in our ears. They have the duty to do that job. They must find money and solve the problem.
Professor Kagwanya.
I think the
election date.
The election date should never be changed. It was cast in concrete because it was reasoned out that you need to do the election in a fixed date which is predictable across the years. That is how to stabilize democracy, and that to avoid what you used to call during the Moi days the secret weapon. Yeah. So we are dealing with the secret weapon, and we deal with it. Every child.
But you can't say it's cast in stone. Surely the Constitution can be reviewed. That's why they're...
and that's why we should build it in our hearts that this is one of the immutables that we should never change. Because we don't want anybody in the future to use the secret weapon.
No, I just mean to the extent that if Kenyans say it's too disruptive in August, that we'd rather have it in December.
It is not disruptive because when the election takes place in those 2 days, it gives us time to do all the stages. If there is a petition, we do it. If there is a runoff, we do it before we reach December. And then we start a new year with a fresh mind. We have 4 months within which to solve all our electoral matters and start governing the country, doing matters of development from January. It is not Kenyan alone. America does these elections way before, so that by January, exactly January 21st, it's January 21st, at midday, the president must be sworn in. You give people a predictable life. People can determine their future.
It's predictable. Yes. Okay. Your views, which will be final.
I support the debt. 80% of the MPs are going to lose their seats. And no, that is what happens. There are studies. Yes, 80% of the MPs have been losing their seats. There are studies there. He's a political scientist, and they have the data. So most of them have realized that they need a few more months to
campaign.
Yeah, no, not to campaign, to earn more money and cushion themselves.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
So
that's why they want to change the election.
And they also think that the president will be happy to extend his term. Yeah. So that is how they are luring him. Yeah. But once he announces that I'm not interested in extending my term, they will lose the
excuse that they are trying to use does not hold. There is what we call the validation bill. You can allocate money, and they can even give a half of the money. The executive can actually use a half of the money. The law allows them to use a half of the money. Then when the new parliament comes in, it will pass an act which would authorize, which will validate whatever would have happened. So whatever Muturi is trying to play around is, they are playing games so that he also extends his time. He's also not sure whether he might be a speaker in the next dispensation. So they are, that is the truth. They are buying time and playing games here.
Right?
And you cannot buy this dress before you even put it on. You are taking it out there to be stitched and changed. So I mean, we have not practiced with the August date.
Right.
Let us have an election under that date, under that dispensation. Then from there we see, is it what challenges did we have? So even the constitutional amendment, we are not saying the constitution is perfect, but let us experiment. You've seen even issues of devolution. There have been aspects which have worked very well. There are others which we are realizing we should not have devolved. There are others which we have left at the national government, which would have been better effected at the county government. But you see, it's because we have been able to get some of those functions going.
Give it time.
Give it time. Let us get the August date. If it works,
the next thing, which is going to work. If, for example, right now, suppose we are pushing the date to December next year, and then there will be a new group which will come up and say, no, they will say IEBC commissioners should expire, and then others will say let us extend by what? Personal interest.
If you take it to
gentlemen, I must wind up. I beg you. Okay.
If you take it to December, the term of the commissioners is expiring in November. So who conducts the elections in December? You know, there are already issues about the commissioner. So pushing the election to December, then you will have an election. You know? So then they'll tell us, now let us stay in Parliament as we try to work out these issues.
My, oh my, and that's where we wind up opinion reports this evening. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for your views. We're back with more news after this.